Okay. Can you see my slide? All right, I can't hear you guys. But anyway, I'm going to start my presentation. State of the Discovery, second year anniversary. Today's date, July 4, 2026. And the whole essence of the discovery is the right treatment, inhalational oxygen, in the right place, at home, at the right time, the golden half hour. This is the first solution since the recorded history of sickle cell 7,300 years ago to prevent, reverse, and stop a sickle cell crisis. The sun has finally risen after 7,300 years of darkness. People have struggled since 3,200 years before Christ to find a solution, and they were never able to. Not even the drug companies, not even the medical researchers, none of them could do that because they were all looking for a medication, even though the solution was right there in front of them, hidden in the literature, in plain sight. In these 2 years of the discovery, we have more than 2,000 members on 3 discovery platforms, and more than 72,000 views on TikTok. And a preliminary study showed a reduction in blood transfusions and hospitalizations of about 80%. And I believe it can get to 90 to 95% without malaria and typhoid. Sickle cell disease essentially is a low oxygen disease. That's all what it is. The sickle hemoglobin has a low tolerance to hypoxia, which is a low oxygen environment. So when there's a low oxygen environment, it undergoes polymerization, which means it changes shape, becomes sticky, adheres to the blood vessel wall, and obstructs the blood vessel. What has been missed with all these scientists, hematologists, researchers, is that the initial phase of a sickle cell crisis is reversible. It's been in the literature since 1930. There's nothing new here. And it is initially reversible with reoxygenation. That's what is in the literature. So you give oxygen when it's reversible, the cells go back to normal. Just as simple. However, once they get past through that reversible stage and they keep on sickling, the cell membrane gets damaged and the cells become irreversibly sickled. At that point, the cell is dead. Oxygen can no longer recover it. It's like giving CPR. When somebody is sick or dying, oxygen will help him recover. If the person is dead, you can put all the oxygen you want. It's not going to wake him up. The same with the red blood cells. Warm oxygen interrupts this cascade of hypoxia when reversible sickling begins before it gets to vessel obstruction and pain and organ damage. And that's the key, preventing the progression from reversible to irreversible crisis. And before my discovery, there were a lot of myths. Even the vice president of Novartis, a big pharma company in the US, was reported telling Fierce Pharma, a publication in 2019, that, medical science have not been able to solve a vaso-occlusive crisis that is so unpredictable and so severe. It's not unpredictable. Low oxygen during sleep and stress are major identifiable triggers. So when somebody, a family, a child, feel they have no control, no knowledge, no power, and they go to bed and wake up in a crisis, they are afraid to sleep because they don't know if they're going to wake up in a crisis. And that creates a lot of anxiety for the child, the family, because they don't know when the crisis is coming. But that's not true. It's a low oxygen environment, and the greatest risk of a crisis is during sleep. So the myth, patients are helpless bystanders. Once a crisis starts, then it's a one-way trip to the hospital. No, my discovery has come to change that. Patients can take control using home oxygen in the golden half hour. It's as simple as that. And then the myth, a crisis is an inevitable path to hospitalization. No. Sickle cell crisis cannot be reversed. No, again. Reversible sickle cells can be restored to normal with home oxygen in the golden half hour. Another myth, blood transfusions are inevitable. No, if you stop the vaso-occlusive crisis in the golden half hour, you reduce or prevent blood transfusions. We have patients on the platform who've not had crisis for more than 1 year. During my time in the FDA, I never saw any drug that had such a significant impact. None. We were happy to approve drugs with 20% impact, 20%. Myth, hydroxyurea is the only available standard of care. No, hydroxyurea does not even reduce crisis more than 50%. Mortality rate in adults, even with and without hydroxyurea, have been the same. Home oxygen directly reverses sickling. Home oxygen is the gold standard. And that's based on the existing literature. Anybody still asking for studies, you go and read the studies that have already been done instead of asking for more studies. Studies have been done, clinical trials have been done, but nobody was reading them. Nobody was connecting the dots for more than 100 years. Myth. Again, reversible cells, once sickled, are damaged for good. No. And Melanie Gonick in MIT had a video, it's on YouTube, it's called Reversible Sickle Cells, and showing in their controlled lab settings how reversible sickle cells, when reoxygenated, go back to normal. Another myth, air travel is safe without oxygen. And this is where the greatest disaster has come from. Even the NIH, at the highest levels of medical establishment of healthcare policy in the United States, advises patients with sickle cell to dress warmly and drink lots of fluids. That's utter garbage. They should know better, because at those high altitudes, partial pressure of oxygen is low. And hypoxia is one of the triggers of sickle cell crisis. So you can see why people have been damaged, injured, and killed over the last 100 years with this kind of advice from the highest medical establishment. Supplemental oxygen is required for any flight exceeding 30 minutes. Oxygen saturations are measured as low as 77% versus the normal 95 to 100%. The saturation occurs within 10 minutes of takeoff. What are the complications? Bone pain, splenic infarct, avascular necrosis, prolonged crisis, in some cases death. Even in the last few years, several of our best and brightest have died after taking prolonged flights, including physicians. Some of them may have heard of my discovery but didn't believe, and that's unfortunate. But supplemental oxygen is required for any flight exceeding 30 minutes. Now, let me go through the studies. This has been a century of discovery. From 1910, when Herrick first described sickle cell disease, 1930s, Scriver and Well in Canada showed sickling varies with oxygen pressure and is reversible. 1930. By the way, 1927, Hahn and Gillespie suggest that hypoxia, low oxygen environment, causes sickling. Meanwhile, in 1921, Banting and Best isolated insulin for diabetic patients. And since then, diabetes, the lifespan of patients with diabetes is now up to 68 years old. But even though we knew this from 1927 and 1930, The lifespan of a male adult is 38 years old for sickle cell and 42 years old for a female patient because nobody was reading the literature, nobody was putting the dots together when all these researchers had done the studies. Okay, now let's go to 1983. Frank and Chu showed reversible sickle cells regained discoid shape upon reoxygenation. 1991, Hebel shows deoxygenation-driven membrane changes are reversible with reoxygenation. 2015, MIT Melanigonic shows visually how reversible sickle cells respond to reoxygenation. And 2024, I made my announcement of my discovery of the golden half hour. So that's that. This is the pathway leading up to my discovery. So again, reversible sickle cells revert to their original shape upon reoxygenation. This is the window for home oxygen to work. There's nothing new about home oxygen. It's used for COPD, for asthma, for everything. There's nothing new about it. Doesn't need any clinical trial for home oxygen. The same oxygen, the same nasal cannula, 2 liters per minute that's used in the hospital when it doesn't work because the crisis is already irreversible by the time the patients get to the hospital. That this irreversibly sickle cells, repeated sickling damages the cell membranes. The cells can no longer return to normal. The cells die, obstruct the blood vessels, lead to severe pain, lead to organ damage. And the body has to clear these cells by destroying them because there's no way it can remove them from obstruction. And what does that lead to? Severe anemia. Then you start the cascade of blood transfusion, acute cases, all kinds of complications, avascular necrosis, leg ulcers, just from the fact that they are irreversibly sickle cells. So why did we miss this for 100 years? Because by the time the patients got to hospital, sickling was already irreversible, beyond the reach of oxygen therapy. My discovery of the golden half hour is a time-dependent intervention, just like the golden hour for stroke or the critical window for a heart attack, where timely action determines outcome. So we have to change the paradigm. That's what my discovery is about, changing the paradigm from a reactive approach, treating patients in a hospital only after irreversible crisis, severe pain, organ damage. So the whole house is burning down by the time you call in the fire service. To preventing a preventive proactive approach, home oxygen restores reversible sickle cells and stops a crisis in the golden half hour. And for those who want to study home oxygen, it's available. Order oxygen from your medical supply store, get some of your patients, write your protocol, and do whatever studies you need to do. I provide the knowledge. It's on the website, sicklecelldiscovery.com. So take the initiative and go and do your studies. And that's fine. But don't ask for studies and you're giving a donation of oxygen and you're not interested. Now, what happens when we wait? When we wait for an irreversible crisis, severe pain and suffering, acute chest syndrome, avascular necrosis, stroke and brain damage, priapism, kidney damage requiring dialysis, organ damage, and death. Now look at this. Look at priapism, which is prolonged erection of the penis. Normally, that will lead to surgery. But we have patients who put on home oxygen and priapism is reversed within 10 minutes. Within 10 minutes, with home oxygen in the golden half hour, we already have several patients who've been able to control their priapism like this instead of ending up in the emergency room and having surgery. So the prevention is this: for any stressor, physical, intellectual, environmental, or physiological, inhale oxygen for 10 minutes to 2 hours before sleep or use it through the night. Sleep is the most dangerous time for a crisis. And what is the flow rate, children? 0.5 to 1.5 liters per minute, adult 1 to 2 liters per minute. And you must use a continuous flow concentrator. Those are the approved and authorized concentrators. Pause, those concentrators will not work. So buying all those cheap concentrators on the internet, you're just wasting your money. On the website, sicklecelldiscovery.com, we have a list of authorized concentrators. We have distributors in Nigeria. Some of those concentrators can be shipped to you from the United States, so wherever you are in the world. Now, if you use home oxygen in the golden half hour and your symptoms don't stop, please proceed to the hospital because something else is going on, either an infection or malaria or hemolysis that's going on. Our study showed in 98 patients, 2025 study, 80 to 90% crisis prevented or aborted. We have patients who've not had a crisis in 1 year. We have fathers who say for the first time in 12 years, they were able to save money because they were not spending all their money on hospital bills. We have children able to go to school, able to finish their exams for the first time in years. %80 reduction in blood transfusion, 79% reduction in hospitalization. And we are sure the more studies, we welcome them. You're going to see an even bigger effect than this. Meanwhile, patients who do not have oxygen continue to suffer high crisis burden, mostly with greater than 3 crises per year, confirming that the treatment effect is real, not regression or bias. Patients report improved sleep, emotional outlook, social participation, and reduced fear of hospitalization. Here, let's listen to some of the voices from the movement. These are all on the website, sicklecelldiscovery.com. It's from one father. Since then, he hasn't been hospitalized at all. The longest time we've gone without hospitalization since home oxygen. Another father says, for the first time in 12 years, I truly saved money this year. No frequent hospitalization. Here, another father says, our boy has not had any crisis since August. No hospitalization. God bless this discovery. The discovery again is using oxygen at the right time in the right place instead of waiting to use it in the hospital. Hold on. Let me go back to my slide. I'm going to resume the slideshow. I'll soon be done. So hold on. Okay, so the pharmaceutical drug companies, they've done their best, but their trials have failed because they couldn't stop a crisis. At that view, phase 3 stand trial failed to reduce painful crisis. European Union authorization was revoked. In Clacuma, just the most recent, August 2025, did not meet its primary endpoint for reducing vaso-occlusive crisis. They've tried, but they cannot, nothing can reduce a crisis other than home oxygen. Nothing. Now, we have some new drugs in the pipeline. They are what we call pyruvate kinase activators. So what they do is they decrease a chemical called 2,3-DPG and increase ATP. So which enables the red blood cells not to offload oxygen and keep oxygen more so they don't have to sickle. The most promising is etavopivat. Hopefully it's going to be approved later this year. But only 27% reduction in the crisis. Now, 48% had an increase in hemoglobin, and it had some side effects. Some patients still had crisis, headaches, fatigue, GI symptoms. So that's the most promising. The other one in the same class of drugs, mitapivat, they show a hemoglobin response, which means they reduce the chronic hemolysis. But this one failed its primary endpoint. It couldn't reduce vaso-occlusive crisis. That's the mitapivat. Hydroxyurea is stable. It was originally developed for cancer. They noticed that, I believe it was in a baboon, that it was raising the level of hemoglobin F, the fetal hemoglobin. So they tried it on human beings, and it was reducing the frequency of painful episodes, but unlike home oxygen, does not directly reverse a sickle cell crisis. It reduces painful episodes by about 50%. Now, side effects can be quite serious. Neutropenia, suppression of the bone marrow, elevation of liver enzymes, infertility. So I recommend the low-dose hydroxyurea, which is a maximum of 500 milligrams per day. There was a study that came out of, I believe, Ibadan, where they found out that the low dose is just as effective as any higher dose without all the serious side effects. Now, of course, we have the cures: bone marrow transplant, leukemia, Casgevy, gene therapy. But these ones cost 2.1 to 3.2 million for the gene therapy. Bone marrow transplant in Nigeria, they are charging 40 to 60 million naira. Well, again, that's fine if you can afford it, but I need to say this here. Even if you're going for a bone marrow transplant or gene therapy, you still need your home oxygen, because any organ damage you have, the organ transplant will not repair that. It will not reverse that damage. It will not restore that damage. It will remain with you. But there was a patient who had sickle cell, had bone marrow transplant way before my discovery. She's cured of sickle cell, but she's bedridden because all the crisis had damaged and destroyed her lungs. So she's essentially on oxygen 100% of the time, not just during sleep, 24/7. But she's cured. She doesn't have sickle cell anymore. So you still need home oxygen to prevent your bone damage. So hold on. I hope my slide is still on. Okay, so I'll soon be done. Oxygen is the cheapest treatment for a chronic illness. An oxygen cylinder costs $130, or about 190,000 for a cylinder, 15,000 naira for a refill. Concentrator is about $500 or 750,000 naira. And but I know many of our people still can't afford even the oxygen cylinder or to refill it. So now let's look at this. Your home oxygen equipment, an oxygen cylinder or a concentrator. Continuous flow, concentrator has to be able to give up to 2 liters per minute. And the oxygen purity is the most important. At least 90% oxygen purity across all flow rates. For Nigeria, with a rechargeable battery, which is important where power is erratic. Now, there have been studies of long-term of use of oxygen. Legono et al., 2021. So those who are asking for studies should go and read the literature. The studies have already been done. She did a 5-year study of home oxygen therapy and found out that it was safe with no side effects for children with sickle cell disease. It's been done. Read the studies. So oxygen is available worldwide. Wherever you are, there'll be a medical supplier that can supply you with an oxygen cylinder or oxygen concentrator. And for those who need, we can also ship a concentrator to you from the United States. So anywhere you are in the world, just go on sicklecelldiscovery.com. In 1921, Banting and Best discovered insulin for diabetes. And the whole lifestyle of diabetes changed. It became a manageable disease. Now people say, oh, they are looking for a cure. Most of our diseases are not cured. They are managed. High blood pressure is not cured. Diabetes is not cured. Thyroid problem, these are all managed. Sickle cell disease, with my discovery of home oxygen, is now a manageable illness. Is no longer a sentence to pain, suffering, organ damage anymore, anywhere in the world. What is the economic impact of sickle cell? Estimated impact in Nigeria is $4.8 to $7.2 billion, or 7.4 to 11.2 trillion naira, lost annually every year through hospital admissions, emergency department visits, blood transfusions, organ complications, premature mortality, lost school attendance, lost workforce productivity, caregiver time. What was the potential impact of my discovery? In Nigeria, based on potential annual reduction in sickle cell burden, just from the study of 98 patients we did, my discovery can increase the economy of Nigeria by $2.5 to $4.5 billion per year, or 3.88 to 6.98 trillion naira per year. And in Africa, that's $4 to $7 billion, or 6.2 to 10.85 trillion naira a year. And in the United States, $1.5 to $3 billion a year. That's the potential impact of my discovery. I must remind people, for oxygen safety, keep your oxygen equipment at least 6 to 10 feet away from open flames, heat sources, or electrical appliances. Place equipment in a well-ventilated area. If you're using portable concentrators, ensure your batteries are charged. Maintain a backup. Regular checks, inspect your oxygen equipment for leaks or malfunctions. Replace or repair faulty components promptly. Storage, store your oxygen cylinders upright, secure them to prevent tipping. Fire safety, no smoking anywhere near oxygen equipment. Avoid using flammable products like petroleum-based ointments or alcohol near oxygen. Backup plan, have an alternative oxygen supply in case of equipment failure. So even if you have a concentrator, if you can afford it, also get a cylinder as a backup. If you have a cylinder, if you can afford it, get another cylinder as a backup. So in conclusion, after 7,300 years of human history, from the pre-dynastic age in Egypt, more than 3,200 years before Christ. The first solution to prevent, reverse, and stop a sickle cell crisis has been discovered. Lives have been changed and saved for hundreds of families all over the world. The state of the discovery is strong. God bless Nigeria, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you. Okay, that's the end of my state of the discovery address. So, Siwa, let's see if there, let's see, I know this has been a very long presentation. Few people have left, but let's see who's still here. Let's see. Okay, so Siwa, what's the next item on the agenda? Do you need to, is it the Dr. Sota concentrator? Is that what we need to show?
Next, we do have a showing of the concentrator, so yeah.
Okay, so hold on, please. I will have to share my screen. Let me pull up the Dr. Sota concentrator. Hold on. Okay, let me come and share my screen. Okay. J2 Sota, specifically manufactured for Nigeria. I'm going to turn it on here at the back. The power switch is at the back. You can see here, oxygen purity is 93%. Flow rate is at 1 liter per minute. And here I'm going to increase the flow rate to 2 liters. And you can see that it's still maintaining 93%.